real quick.
Bangrinama, and the PSs who have joined online, PS Miaka, Republic of Kenya, Dr. Kevin Ditsai. We are expecting PS Miaka, Rwanda, who will join us shortly. Mr. Nyakina. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should get started. I want to inform you that according to the program, we're supposed to start with the protocols, with the anthem, the guest of honor, but the guest of honor is on his way coming. For the interest of time, we thought we should go straight away to the keynote speech, and then we'll proceed with panel discussion in case the guest of honor will not be around. But in any time the guest of honor comes, we'll stop at any point, and then we'll proceed with the official opening of this anniversary. So I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the Acting Executive Secretary of Inter-University Council, Professor Mike Kuria, to give a brief welcome statement. He'll give a more substantive during the official opening session. So Professor Mike Kuria, please come forward. You greet the participants who are physically here and those who have joined us virtually. And then we'll proceed with the keynote presentation.
Thank you very much, Cousin. Dear permanent secretaries in the ministries responsible for East African affairs in the East African community, dear permanent secretaries in the ministries of education, responsible for higher education in the EAC partner states, our keynote speaker, Professor Mayunga Nkunya, dear chair of the executive committee of the Inter-University Council for East Africa, members of the executive committee, vice-chancellors of member universities and beyond, regional and international partners who have joined us, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I think mine is just to welcome guests for at this particular point in time, maybe a little bit later, we'll say one or two things earlier. I just want to take this opportunity first and foremost to thank you for joining us from wherever you have joined us from. These are interesting times. We have quite a number of people in this hall, but I'm aware that we have participants from all over the world. We have guests from Germany, we have guests from all the partner states, of course, and beyond. And we want to appreciate everyone who has made the effort to come. This morning, I am quite actually excited because of the keynote speaker that we have invited. Maybe we'll say a little bit more later, but I'm quite excited that Professor Mayunga Nkunya was able to come from the United Republic of Tanzania to join us. And I know that he is going to deal with this subject appropriately. I have known Professor Mayunga Nkunya for a very long time, since 2006. And I have seen what his ideas can do in terms of transformation of higher education in the region. And so the choice was not by mistake, was very deliberate. But let me invite or allow the chair of the executive committee, Professor Faustin Bay, to just say a few words. And after he says a few words, then the master of ceremonies will come and continue with the program. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you and ask that you participate actively in the chat rooms, and if necessary and you need to, you'll be enabled to be able to address the audience. Karibuni sana. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Hello, you hear me? Let me also take the opportunity. Hello. Yeah, let me take this opportunity to join hands with the acting executive secretary, Professor Mike Korea, to welcome everybody to this very important conference at celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Inter-University Council for East Africa. The permanent secretaries responsible for East African cooperation from the member states. Permanent secretary is responsible for education from the member states. The East African Community Secretary General, the Executive Director of the East African Council, distinguished guests, invited guests, our keynote speaker, Professor Kunya, the Vice-Chancellors and their representatives, as well as our development partners. It's indeed a great honor for the Inter-University Council to host this very important conference to mark its 50th anniversary. At this point time, despite the difficulties that we are facing arising from COVID-19 pandemic, we are able to organize the conference, and some of us physically attending the conference in Entebbe, while others are following and attending virtually. It is indeed an honor to us in the executive committee to be associated with the holding of this conference. It has been pointed out, giving detailed remarks at some point later on when the formal opening proceedings is going to take place. At this juncture, allow me to just say we are delighted to have all of you attending, but also we are delighted to have Professor Nkunya accepting the position of being key to this very important milestone in the Inter-University Council. As it has been pointed out by Professor Nkunya, is not new to the Inter-University Council. He has been with us. He has been associated with the development of the Inter-University Council, and his contribution is enormous. And we really want learning much from his wide experiences in the management of higher education in the region, but also globally. With those few remarks, I'll be giving detailed remarks at some point later on. I once again welcome all of you to this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Tanzania. Thank you very much for your welcome statement, which we take it as a very strong blessing for us to kickstart our very important event this morning. Let me take this opportunity, distinguished participants, to welcome Mr. Maurice Mugisha to come forward here. Then I could formally introduce him. You know, in our African context, whenever you are hosting a big event, it is a big day. It's very important to invite someone else to come and run the show. I would love to sit down there behind and see what's happening. And we thought we should find someone within the higher education stakeholder to come and help us to run this show this morning. And this man other than Maurice Mugisha. Maybe Maurice Mugisha, you could introduce yourself before you proceed in guiding us in this morning program. But we have a bit of a change of the program. As I mentioned earlier, we are starting with the technical section of the program. And according to the program, we have a session on resolutions of IUCEA at 50 webinar series. You might be aware that as part of these celebrations, IUCEA did conduct 3 webinar series that aimed at engaging various higher education stakeholders in the region to discuss and take stock on the milestones that IUCEA has achieved since 1970. We had a 3 webinar series, which has documented a number of issues and came up with resolutions which we thought. Ben, can you mute? So the resolutions of the webinar series will inform us what are the voices of higher education stakeholders on what IUCEA has make some step forward in the next 50 years to come. So Dr. Mbwambo will come forward here to present those resolutions. After the resolution, then we'll move on to invite the keynote presenter, Professor Mayunga Nkunya. Maurice, please come forward and then you can take over the mic. Introduce yourself and then you proceed.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I wanted to, first of all, appreciate you, Doctor, for the invitation. And on behalf of, the various stakeholders, I want to appreciate you for allowing an outsider to come and be part of your meeting. It's my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to join you today in this celebration of 50 years. As he said, my name is Maurice Mugisha, and I am a media practitioner. I've been in the media profession for the last 17 years, having worked previously with the Nation Media Group, both here in Kampala and Nairobi, Kenya, and also now working with the national broadcaster, the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, as the Deputy Managing Director. So I think Doctor wanted an outsider who would come and witness the great successes that you have been handling and how you've done a great job. And I guess it's only right that you have an outsider to appreciate what you're doing. So I want to thank you all for this opportunity, but it's really a pleasure of mine to be part of this annual general meeting of the Inter-University Council of East Africa. So as Doctor said, let's quickly move into our program. And as mentioned, we will have to interject in the program along the way when our chief guest arrives. But allow me, with all protocol observed, and I will probably run through that protocol much later with our chief guest, to invite Dr. Jonathan Mbwambo to come and run us through the resolutions of the webinar series. There are 50 webinar series, so please come. Keep it short, and then we will quickly move to the next item on our program. You're most welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm not intending to repeat what the speakers
sico kimwe na za nama twahoramo byumvikana nabi cyane.
Webinar series. You must be aware that as part of this celebration, IUCEA did conduct 3 webinar series. That being at engaging.
Okay now. So I'm going to make a short presentation of what transpired during the webinar series. And my presentation is going to follow 3 aspects. I will look at the quick background of what happened. I'll make a presentation on the resolution, on the highlights. And I'm sharing my screen now. So my presentation is going to be split into 3 aspects. First, I'll look at the background of the webinar series. I will make a tour of highlights and recommendations from keynote speakers and panelists. And finally, I will end my presentation with some aspects of resolutions. As you are already aware, we had the 3 webinars that were conducted to mark the 50 years anniversary. And these webinars, as it has been highlighted, were made to take stock of the progress made during the 50 years, discuss critical challenges facing higher education in the East African community, and set the agenda for the development of higher education in line with the EAC Vision 2050. The first webinar reflected on the 50 years of higher education development, looking at research and innovation. And this webinar was presented by Professor Ngure, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Academic Affairs, St. Paul's University in the Republic of Kenya. Professor Ngure, the webinar series was moderated by Professor Chacha Nyegoti Chacha, former Executive Secretary of IUCEA, and the 4 panelists participated in the discussion. Ignace Gitare, Principal of College of Higher Science and Technology, University of Rwanda, Professor Suleiman Ngware from University of Dar es Salaam, and the engineer Paul Isaac Musasizi from Chira Motors Limited, Uganda. Using examples from Kenya and the East African community, Professor Ngure presented a history of development of higher education in Kenya and the region. And he pitched his presentation on 4 major aspects. First, he looked at the changing landscape of higher education. He looked at the changing landscape of higher education and emerging challenges. He also looked at the changing landscape of research and innovation in the East African community, and here he made a tour of issues and challenges. He also interventions, and he started his presentation by looking at two aspects of higher education. First of all, let's look at funding, and he noted that funding in higher education has been reduced to around 35% on operational costs, but more important was competition for students and the need to generate income for operational costs has resulted into first proliferation of campuses, but also duplication of programs. And this has led to two issues. First, the decline in quality of graduates produced by universities, but also more serious is the low investment in innovation. He also highlighted that the number of graduates employed in the year of graduation has plunged down from 79% in 2011 to around 13% in 2017. Looking at the changing landscape of research and innovation, Professor Ngure also observed that funding for research and innovation is still very low compared to the benchmark that was put forward by AU Commission for Science and Technology Strategy for Africa that was put in 2014, where countries are expected to spend 1% of their GDP. And as a result of low expenditure, countries in East Africa are ranked very low when it comes to innovation ranks. He also looked at, and observed that while universities including research and innovation in strategic plans of their universities, the number of staff dedicated to research and innovation is only 10%. He also indicated that funds from internal sources, that is fees and other sources, dedicated to research and innovation is less than 3%. He also noted that the research outputs are very low, and he used an example from Kenya, where less than one paper was produced by 14,000 lecturers in 2016. He also indicated that it was very low at 42%, but 42 patents in 2018, and only 2 patents were produced by private universities in 2018. He also observed that staff dedicated to research and innovation are loaded with the administrative and teaching responsibilities. So what can IUCEA do? And he challenged IUCEA to do the following. First, to develop community of practice within the East African Community Higher Education Area Framework, and strengthen the link between universities and research institutions. He challenged IUCEA to champion gender equity in postgraduate training through student mobility programs, but he also challenged IUCEA to strengthen quality assurance policy and instrument for postgraduate training. He further asked the IUCEA to support universities to adopt new technologies in teaching and learning, make IUCEA a go-to place for capacity building in university management and governance, and to revisit student mobility programs to cater for wider spectrum of internationalization. The second webinar was presented to cover issues of community engagement. And here the presenter, Professor Kalunde Pili Sibuga from Sokoine University of Agriculture, looked at the policy and practice for community engagement in East Africa. This seminar was held on 28th of August 2020. The seminar was moderated by Professor Juma Shabani, the National Commission for Higher Education Burundi, and the list of people who participated as panelists is indicated. Vice-Chancellors from Muni University, private sector was also represented, and the other stakeholders. Professor Sibuga started her presentation by looking at the meaning of community engagement in the context of higher education. She also spent time on policy framework for community engagement, and she also spent time to see how community engagement was practiced in the region. Professor Sibuga also looked at the challenges and the way forward for community engagement in East Africa. And she answered one question: why universities should engage in community engagement? And the answer to that question was there is no luxury here. Universities must engage in community engagement because it is part of their responsibility. So she said that other than teaching and research, universities are established to undertake outreach activities, which is a mixture of advisory and community services. Universities are expected to do consultants, which is, again is a mixture of advisory and community services. She also observed that universities are expected to be change agency, they are knowledge hubs located and blended in the local communities, and they have varied expertise. So there is no way university may avoid to engage with the community. She looked at the policy and discovered that there's no clear policy for community engagement in the region. Universities have been doing community engagement through what she called the proxy or quasi policies, including outreach policy, research policy, civic engagement policy, and gender policy, to name but a few. So as a result of lack of clear policies, there's a variance of community engagement activities under varying frameworks and therefore different outcomes. She also dwelled a little bit on the challenges for community engagement, and she looked first at funding as a challenge. She also looked at the lack of structured community engagement programs. Staffing levels and expertise in community engagement is lacking in the region, but also there are issues to do with the intellectual property rights and patents, where innovation from community programs may have issues, and particularly with the role of community involved in the research outputs. The academic programs in the region are also lacking aspects of community engagement, and most of the community engagement programs and outcomes are not well documented. She made a number of recommendations. First, university to develop a strategic action and commitment to engage with public and formulate policies, guidelines, and favorable conditions for community engagement. She recommended that researchers and the faculty be recognized for community engagement activities, and this may also include the inclusion of community engagement output for promotion. She also recommended for inclusion of community engagement content in the curricula. She also advised for universities to develop networks and fora for community engagement, both at national level and the regional level. The last webinar series was presented by Right Honorable Charles Clark. This is a former Home Secretary and Education and Skills Secretary of the UK. Mr. Charles Clark presented an area which was also very, very interesting, reshaping higher education in East Africa, and he looked at the global trends and reflection from the East African Community Agenda 2050. This webinar was moderated by Professor Koi Muchira Kibuga from New Bomet University Council of Kenya. And the panelists were Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, Professor Bonaventure Rutinwa from Makerere and the University of Dar es Salaam respectively, but also Professor Kiama Gitahi, Vice-Chancellor of University of Nairobi, and Professor Margaret Mudui, Vice-Chancellor of Pan-African Christian University, and Professor Liambabaje were also part of the panelists. The presenter pitched his presentation from East African Vision 2050 and the African Union Agenda 2063. The speaker observed that the East African Community Vision 2050 is closely harmonized with the African Union Agenda 2063, in the following major aspects. First, a prosperous Africa, Africa of good governance, democracy, justice, and the rule of law, Africa with strong cultural identity, shared values, and ethics, Africa whose development is people-centered or people-driven, and Africa as a global player. So what he was arguing here is for Africa not to be left behind. The speaker warned that as we look ahead on the Vision 2050 for East African community, we also have to be cognizant of the challenges that we must be prepared to face. The first challenge is international competition, and this is competition for resources, but also for students. The other challenge is the fast-changing world of technology, and here he cited the examples from the fourth industrial revolution. He also presented the challenges related to the new forms and ways of working, including the new normal. This meeting was supposed to be physical, but now we're doing it online. He also presented challenges related to demands for cultural identity and awareness and demands from women and youth. And he also presented a challenge that has to do with the dealing with governance in the changing world. He pointed out that the central key element for the realization of East African Community Vision 2050 is the quality of higher education. In his own statement, he said the quality of higher education is more important than any other institution, including the government. And he had reasons to do so. First, he said the universities are engaging with a wider range of people in society. Universities are engaging with the economy, and here he cited that a good economy will always come from well-trained people from universities. He also mentioned a little bit on quality of public service. Quality of public service, and here he said that any government with quality public service should appreciate that all these good people are coming from higher education institutions, and therefore good quality universities will always produce good quality public service. He also presented that universities are part and parcel of the general conversation and moderation of discussion of issues and challenges facing communities. And finally, he said that the universities are responsible for creation of critical mass of people who are dynamic, entrepreneurial, and also capable of steering the future for African development. So he urged university to do the following. First, to understand and interpret the process of change. He also challenged university to offer approaches that would harness the process of change for general benefit. He also challenged university to educate and train high quality workforce with necessary skills to address change, and also create an intellectual changing climate and culture that promotes the virtue of understanding of science and the technology. So based on the discussion that we had from these three keynote papers or webinars and the panelists, we are making a bit of some commitments related to the following. First, higher education governance and management. Secondly, we are making commitment on higher education research and innovation, and we're also making commitment on community engagement and support. So for higher education governance and management, we were promising to undertake activities, including capacity building to continuously improve administrative governance, planning, and stewardship systems to enable universities to offer high quality training and research and innovation as envisioned in the EAC Vision 2050. When it comes to higher education, research, and innovation, we are making one commitment that IUCEA will attempt to develop policy and instrument for both establishment and management of higher education centers of excellence for specialized training and research in selected priority areas in humanities, science, technology, and innovation. And our last commitment is to develop a community engagement framework and undertake capacity building activities for effective community engagement in line with EAC Vision 2050. I would like to end my presentation by thanking all people who participated in the webinars, especially the keynote speakers, panelists, and the general public for accepting our invitation to participate in the seminars, but also to share their knowledge. I invite all of you to join us into action. And I would like to present a final quote from one of the speakers, Professor Ngure, who ended with what Steve Covey said, that what you do has far greater impact than what you say. I want to thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. I wish we can do better, really. Another round of applause. Thank you, Jonathan. I want to mention, and for those of you who are joining us online and you may not be able to see us in this room, that we are perfectly and socially distanced. We've ensured that everyone is at least 6 feet apart. It's unfortunate because with any other annual general meeting, there would have been hugs and handshakes, and we would have been at some point saying, please greet your neighbor and ask them how they are. These are unique times, and so I really want to apologize. I also want, in a very, very special way, to apologize for you who are joining us online, because you have failed and missed the opportunity of being by this very beautiful lakeside town here in Entebbe. There is no air conditioning in this room because we have a perfect breeze that is coming through. So it is unfortunate that you can't be here with us and enjoy Ugandan food and the Ugandan hospitality. Our Ugandan friends here would have been happy to receive you. So I want to apologize for you and hope that next year in Nairobi, we will be able to hug and shake hands. You notice, Dr. Kosama, I've added myself in Nairobi's program next year. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we'll quickly move to the presentation, our keynote presentation. And this will be on the role of the IUCEA of the development of higher education and fostering the ESC integration agenda. As mentioned, he's not new to us, and I'm sure you all of us know who he is. So welcome with me, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Kunya Mayunga, who is also the chairperson, Tanzania Commission for Universities, who will be making our keynote. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. You're most welcome, Professor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to recognize Mama Mwanje, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of ESC Affairs in the Republic of Uganda. When I was Executive Secretary here, we worked very closely together to resolve many of the difficulties that we are facing IUCEA. And I would like to once again to express my sincere thanks to her support during my tenure as Executive Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm given 15 minutes, but 20 minutes. I'll try to be within time, but I may exceed it a little bit. And I think you will excuse me for that. This is the outline of my presentation. I'll pass you through some historical aspects with respect to harmonization and therefore regional integration supported by higher education during the first ESC, and then the birth of IUCEA, then IUCEA in the new ESC, which we are in now, and the efforts that IUCEA has made in establishing a regional quality assurance system, and operationalization of the ESC Common Market Protocol as far as higher education is concerned. And you have heard previously that East Africa is now operating as a common higher education area. So I will take you through what are the implications, and I'll give a conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been reading a lot about the development of higher education in East Africa. I came to note that the establishment of the University of East Africa in the 1960s, specifically in 1963, was key to what we are doing at the moment and what we are at the moment as far as higher education is concerned. I also noted that despite the fact that the University of East Africa was established as an institution of the then East African Common Services Organization, which was a predecessor of the East African Community, the idea to establish this university was conceived in 1960, even before all the East African Community countries had not gained independence. At that time of the University of West Africa, we all know, as most of us know, because I see many of the audience, people in the audience are young, they may not know this, but during the era of the University of West Africa, which consisted of three colleges in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, then it was Tanganyika, each of those colleges was offering specific academic programs for students coming from all the East African countries and even beyond. And so that was the beginning of collaboration and therefore regional integration. However, in 1970, we all know that great University of West Africa was dissolved. Some people say it collapsed, but it was actually dissolved intentionally. And in its place, 3 universities were established in each of the 3 countries. But immediately it was realized that to maintain the collaboration that has existed even before independence of the East African countries, it was necessary to establish a framework that would ensure this collaboration continues, and therefore the Inter-University Committee for East Africa was established. I think whenever you talk of the Inter-University Council for East Africa, this history is inevitable. You must you must go through it. So IUC then, Inter-University Committee, was responsible for coordinating the broader regional agenda on higher education. And this involved exchange of students and academic staff, sharing of academic programs, and so on and so forth. After the collapse of the EAC in 1977, which we all know and we regret, but it happened, the commitment for collaboration among the 3 universities still remained. And this is the one that led to the survival of IUCEA, even after EAC had disintegrated. There was commitment. The 3 universities and people in there felt that without a collaboration framework, we will not survive. So they maintained IUC, hosted by then the Republic of Uganda. However, because of the disintegration of EAC, which was financing IUCEA, the financing aspect and other arrangements became a serious problem. And this even threatened the survival of IUC. Therefore, in recognition of this predicament of IUC, in 1980, the vice-chancellors of the 3 universities in East Africa, in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, conceived ways of sustaining the activities of IUC. So they decided to enter into a memorandum of understanding in the presence of their permanent secretaries. And because there was no intergovernmental framework to anchor this institution, they now established inter-university cooperation under the name Inter-University Council for East Africa. They structured it as an association of universities rather than an intergovernmental organization, because there was no framework for it to be an intergovernmental organization. And it was responsible for maintaining the collaboration that had existed before. And the MOU also specified how IUCEA would be financed, that is through equal contributions of the 3 governments. This I think was made in the presence of the permanent secretaries who committed themselves to finance, as well as universities making annual subscriptions. So this is the only arrangement that was there then to support Inter-University Council for West Africa, now then as an association of universities. However, despite that goodwill, it was not very easy to support IUCEA financially. And this really survived, threatened the survival of the institution. So when I was IUCEA executive secretary, one of the permanent agenda items in our meetings was arrears by partner states that were accumulated way back in the 1980s. Arrears. I don't know the situation now. But despite this these problems facing IUCEA at the political arena, the three countries engaged themselves in reviving EAC, and we all know that in 1999, EAC was revived, and IUCEA was recognized as one of the surviving institutions of the former EAC. And thereafter, even before that, as the revival of EAC was in progress, IUCEA had committed a team of experts to undertake a study that would lead to revitalization of IUCEA, so that it could be integrated in the new EAC. And the results from that study led to the establishment of a protocol for the establishment of EAC, which was signed, I think, in 2002. And that marked the formal integration of IUCEA into the new EAC framework. However, it still remained as an association of universities. And therefore, the integration, the alignment of IUCEA into EAC was somehow loose, because decisions were not made by the EAC, decisions with respect to IUCEA, but rather they were made within the IUCEA itself by the annual meeting. It was at that time it was called Annual General Meeting of Vice-Chancellors. So in 2009, the East African Legislative Assembly enacted an act to formally integrate IUCEA into the EAC institutional framework. And it was given, one of the mandates given to IUCEA in that act was to coordinate the development of higher education, harmonization of higher education, and the research. At that time, research was also mentioned. And the following year, just when operationalization of the act had started, EAC established the EAC Common Market Protocol. And in that protocol, the functions of IUCEA were broadened to include harmonization of higher education that would promote regional integration. Now, the starting point that IUCEA considered important for harmonization to happen of higher education in the region was to establish a regional quality assurance system. Despite that, the process had started in 2006 effectively, but with the coming into force of the IUCEA Act in 2009, this became a very important imperative. And therefore, IUCEA worked towards establishing this system. And the first activity was to develop a handbook, a quality assurance handbook involving all the then three countries, Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda, and later Rwanda and Burundi. And this book was called Roadmap called Quality. It is still there. It was meant to guide both internal and external quality assurance processes for programs as well as institutional assessment. This book was published in 4 volumes, each covering a specific area and a particular target segment of the higher education players, that is either higher education institutions or the regulatory agencies in the countries, EAC countries. Although all volumes formed an integral part of the handbook. So in brief, these are the areas that are covered in the 4 volumes. As you will see that they are meant to develop proper quality assurance systems at institutional level, as well as at national level in the individual ESC countries. So volume 1 provides guidelines for self-assessment at program level. And this is meant for colleges, schools, faculties, departments in universities. And volume 2 provides guidelines for external assessment, explaining the processes for external quality assessment at program level. The specific target for this volume is for external expert team, which is referred to as a peer review team. But also, this volume is useful to colleges, schools, faculties, and departments in preparing themselves for peer review. Volume 3 provides guidelines for self-assessment at institutional level, and this is specifically aimed at to guide quality assurance processes at the central management of universities, and also offer instruments guiding more discovery about the quality of the institutions. And volume 4 discusses the implementation of a quality assurance system. So these are the 4 volumes, and the idea, the aim was to have this framework, regional framework, to be cascaded down to institutions and to nations. And that meant this was just a generic framework for which universities in East Africa, as well as regulatory agencies in East Africa, would cascade into their own system, and taking into consideration the needs of the specific needs in the countries and the institutions. This handbook essentially was aimed at supporting universities and regulatory agencies in East Africa to implement good practices of quality assurance, because harmonization of higher education and therefore regional integration cannot happen if the quality of education offered by one member state is questionable, is not acceptable by others. So it was necessary for having these universities to have good practice for quality assurance. And also, secondly, to apply the standards and criteria for assessing the quality of higher education. 3, to develop an adequate internal quality assurance system based on international practices. As I say, this generic system is supposed to be cascaded down into institutions and countries, and to discover the quality of their own programs by offering self-assessment instruments for internal quality assurance, the teaching learning process, and the institutional and other institutional aspects. In 2015, as I was exiting as ES of IUCEA, we decided to combine volumes 1 and 2 and to revise them extensively to form one volume that would guide internal as well as external program assessment. And in 2016, IUCEA published a 5th volume covering principles and practice and management of external quality assurance in East Africa to guide the partner states, particularly in this area of quality assurance, regional quality assurance. So once this system was in place, there was need for instruments to operationalize it. And therefore, IUCEA decided to do the following. First of all, to develop a policy framework, because these are just instruments, you need a policy framework. We should have started with a policy framework and then establish the system. But that was found not to be appropriate because of, first of all, quality assurance is a new phenomenon in the ESC countries. If you started with a policy framework, it was very difficult to go to the next stage. So we thought, let us first start with the instruments that will enable the participants in this area to internalize the system and then to have a policy framework. And also IUCEA initiated a process to develop generic benchmarks for academic programs that were meant to guide harmonization of curricula of the academic programs offered by universities. And IUCEA also established an East African Higher Education Quality Assurance Network as a forum for continuous sharing of experiences, networking, and quality assurance activities among quality assurance practitioners in the region. So these are the three operational areas that were established in order to operationalize the IUCEA the regional quality assurance framework. But at the same time, capacity building was carried out as a continuous activity to ensure that all these, what IUCEA was doing was being internalized in the universities and in the regulatory agencies. So this system being in place, the next activity was to establish systems for operationalization of the Common Market Protocol. As I mentioned, IUCEA is given a mandate in the protocol to harmonize higher education, leading to regional integration. So to facilitate operationalization of the Common Market Protocol, in relation to mutual recognition of academic and professional qualifications across the region, IUCEA developed the East African Qualifications Framework for Higher Education as an instrument for that purpose. The document is there. You can read it. The qualifications framework is expected to serve as a convergence platform for harmonization of qualifications levels and types, entry requirements in the higher education systems in East Africa, progression pathways, articulation pathways, and this is meant to contribute towards transforming East Africa into a common higher education area. The development of the East African Qualifications Framework involved a diverse spectrum of stakeholders in the 5 partner states. Then this was before South Sudan had joined EAC, and governments were involved. Responsible ministries in the governments were fully involved, not only ministries responsible for EAC and higher education, but ministries responsible for labor, industries, and so on and so forth. Higher education institutions, we carried out a very extensive study. Employers were involved as well, and so on and so forth. The qualification framework is intended to guide the alignment of the national qualifications framework in the partner states of the EAC to the regional framework for providing comparability of the education and training systems and the qualifications attained in the partner states. To have regional integration, to achieve regional integration, you need to recognize the education system in another country, because regional integration is all about people. So that these people can move from one country to the other without any objection or because of their the quality of education they have or the qualifications they have attained in their home countries. But this system also covers qualifications which are attained outside the region. And because East Africa is not living in isolation, so it is also intended to cover qualifications attained or obtained outside the region. The qualifications framework is intended to be a generic instrument for the region upon which member states' national qualifications framework are anchored for the purpose of harmonization and the synchronization of the education and training systems and the qualifications attained within the region. Because each country has its own system and its own agenda as far as higher education is concerned, and therefore the regional system cannot be a supranational system for which every country must prescribe. Each country will have its own system, but it must be anchored to the regional system so that the two systems speak to each other. And this will facilitate mutual recognition of the education training systems and the qualifications attained in the EAC region in a guided manner, thus enabling EAC to operate as a common higher education and that fosters regional integration. Now, the system having been put in place and the EAC common higher education having been declared in 2017 in Dar es Salaam, in May 2017, there are a lot of implications to everybody in East Africa, every player in higher education in East Africa. And I have tried to identify some of these implications. There could be more. The first one is that EAC partner states need to harmonize their national higher education systems by aligning them, but not necessarily making them identical to the regional framework, including alignment of the national qualifications frameworks to the East African qualifications framework for higher education. 2, EAC needs to establish a regional accreditation system based on the regional higher education harmonization framework that is now operational in the region. And this is guided by the quality assurance system I just mentioned. And this will strengthen the current system of mutual recognition of accreditation decisions by individual partner states. Because nowadays, the accreditation of one university, one program in one country of the EAC is automatically recognized in the other, but there's no regional framework for that. So this is necessary. 3, EAC through IUCEA needs to lay down strategies for operationalization of the EAC of the East African qualifications framework for higher education in the aspects that are indicated in the framework document. The framework document has indicated many areas that need to be put in place so that operationalization of the framework is facilitated. 4, EAC needs to strengthen the administrative arrangements for coordination, monitoring, and evaluating the attainment of operational milestones towards achieving regional integration. And 5, universities need to harmonize their operational systems by aligning them to the EAC framework, including their internal quality assurance and credit systems, curriculum benchmarks, and the qualifications descriptors for them to support cross-border engagements within the context of the EAC common higher education area and the regional integration. It was mentioned that I am chairperson of the Tanzania Commission for Universities, and the Tanzania Commission for Universities is already doing this. We have already started developing benchmarks for academic programs, which are aligned to the EAC framework. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would like to say the following. 1, transformation of EAC into a common higher education is a continuous process that is guided by the declaration of heads of state of the EAC countries, which was made in May 2017, as I have mentioned. 2, transformation of EAC into a common higher education area is based on the commitment by the partner states to participate as players in the common higher education area and for continuous monitoring of the attainment of milestones and the impact. And 3, the common higher education area requires stakeholders' collective commitment in order to influence policy development in the individual countries and the entire EAC region for the arrangement to foster East African regional integration. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I wanted to tell you in a nutshell. There are many things I would have told you, but time was the limitation. I want to thank you very much for your attention.
Another round of applause for Professor. Thank you very much, Professor. And for those of you who are online, you can do the usual. You will wave. We will see that you're waving, which means a hand clap for our keynote speaker. So we want to thank you so much, Professor Cunha, for this keynote presentation. I need to mention that a little later, as guided by the program, we will have a panel discussion with our peers who are with us online and those who are here with us physically to look into this keynote presentation, but also share the different perspectives of our member countries. I want to mention that our chief guest, as you noticed, there was a bit of movement. So our chief guest is almost here. And so shortly we will be receiving our chief guest. And as soon as he's here, we'll then begin the formal celebration of 50 years and also the opening ceremony of this annual general meeting. So that will happen as soon as our chief guest joins us. But I also want in a very special way to recognize the presence of our various stakeholders who are joining us online via Zoom, which is actually the new normal. So we want to thank you all for joining us for this annual general meeting. And we welcome all of you for this meeting that is actually happening here in Entebbe, Uganda. I will also at a later time invite the different speakers who are also joining us via Zoom, and they will be making their presentations online. And as guided by the acting executive secretary, we will be having different speeches, both from those who will be with us here physically and those who are joining us online, like the chairperson who spoke a short while ago, but he will also be again speaking and making a statement when our chief guest has arrived. So mine is to really hold forth for now until our chief guest arrives. We can't break that program protocol because we want to manage our time. But I do promise that we will be able to conclude our program on time for us to be able to be in time for the other sessions. The panel discussion is also an open plenary. So if you're joining us online and if you're already in the chat room, making a submission or at least a contribution to our keynote address, our secretariat will pick that comment, and time allowing, we will share some of your comments and questions during the panel discussion. So if you can leave a comment and you can be specific on who you want to answer that, whether it's Professor Cunha himself, who we may get feedback from a little later through the secretariat, and the communication shared on the platform. So we will make it a bit open and keep it as interactive as possible so that we are able to get everyone's views for this engagement. So we will very shortly wait for our chief guest, who should be joining us very shortly, and we should be able to continue with our program. Thank you very much.
Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu. Uzalendo pia mshikamano viwe msingi wa umoja wetu, na tulinde uhuru na amani, mila zetu na desturi zetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu. Viwandani na hata mashambani, tufanye kazi sote kwa makini, tujitoe kwa hali na mali, tuijenge jumuiya bora. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu.
Minister of East African Community Affairs of Uganda, Major General Entebbe, the PS Ministry of East Africa Community Affairs, Edith Mwanje, and our chief guest, I noticed everyone here calls her Mama Mwanje, so I will stick to Mama Mwanje. The PS from Burundi, Dr. Frederick Banjirinama, who is here with us. The PS Kenya for the Ministry of East African Community Affairs, Dr. Desai, who's joining us online. The PS Rwanda, the Minister of East African Community Affairs, who's also joining us online. Our chief guest is Oswald Nyakana. Our Executive Secretary, Professor Mike Kuria. Our chief guest, also our chairperson, Professor Faustine, is online and is also with us. The Vice Chairperson, Professor Joy Kwesiga. Our partners, stakeholders, members, ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome, all of you, to this Inter-University Council of East Africa annual general meeting, but also a celebration on our chief guest of 50 years. So this is our 50-year anniversary, and we want to welcome you, Honorable Minister, for joining us this morning. I want to quickly move to our program, so allow me to invite Professor Mike Kuria to come and make welcome remarks, and then I will also invite him to invite our chairperson to do the same. So you're most welcome, Professor Mike.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremony. Our guest of honor, the Minister for East African Affairs, Republic of Uganda, Honorable Kahinde Utafire, dear permanent secretaries in the ministries responsible for East African Affairs, in the EAC partner states, their partners, permanent secretaries in the ministries responsible for higher education in the partner states, our keynote speaker, Professor Mayunga Nkunya, dear chair of the executive committee of the Inter-University Council for East Africa, members of the executive committee present, vice-chancellors of member universities and beyond, dear regional and international partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I first want to take this opportunity to extend warm welcome to every one of you to this great day in which we are celebrating IUCEA at 50, the Inter-University Council for East Africa at 50. I am really delighted that we have guests from all over the world. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, every partner state in East Africa is represented: Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Uganda, and the United Republic of Tanzania. It is also great to see colleagues from partner institutions. Our keynote speaker this morning, when he was addressing us, mentioned about the East African Quality Assurance System and emphasized on some of the tools that were developed. And I'm glad to report that the German Academic Exchange Services is here represented both from Nairobi and from Bonn in Germany. And we are delighted that they could join us this morning because they made a great contribution towards that particular system. I think the Professor Mayunga Nkunya will bear witness to that effect. I know that I would like to mention every one of you who is attending, but it's not possible because of time. So you'll allow me to just make one or two remarks because this is what I should do at this point in time. So it is not to make a speech, but just to make one or two remarks. Number one is to say that in 1970, when IUC, that was mentioned by our keynote speaker this morning, was formed, there were only 3 universities. It was collaboration between those 3 universities. And yet, if you look at it now, IUCEA alone has 130 member universities. And in East Africa, I am sure we have over 300 universities. The number of students at that particular time, I am not very sure. But when I look at the records, the University of Nairobi had slightly over 2,000 students, for example. And now as we speak, they have more than 70,000 students. So you can see, ladies and gentlemen, what kind of growth that has taken place in the course of the time. It was also mentioned by our speaker this morning that in 2017, the East African heads of state declared East Africa a common high, and IUCEA was given the responsibility of making sure that that is implemented. And as part of our celebrations this morning, ladies and gentlemen, I think we must ask ourselves some few questions. I did hear from the speaker this morning that some of the questions that I have put here, he already answered them. But I believe that in the course of the day, as we engage and discuss, more of these questions will be answered. And the questions I have in mind are this. Number one, when the declaration was made for the common higher education area of East Africa, what did it mean then? Number two, what does that mean today? It is a few years since that was announced. Does it still mean the same thing now, or have we revised it, or do we need to revise it? Number three, I could ask, what is the untapped potential in that declaration? And number four, I could ask, what can we do to tap into that declaration and maximize on it and make sure that we have a robust East African common higher education area? I'm not a good student of history, ladies and gentlemen. I must admit that history was not one of my strong points in high school. I had a very boring history teacher, I'm afraid to say. And I'm also sorry to say that he was Ugandan. Every afternoon, I think they put those classes in the afternoon just to mess up my life. because every evening we had this history, and the guy talked in a very sonorous voice. I could hardly hear him. And he used to notice that I was not happy in his class, so he always picked on me, and that was not good. But ladies and gentlemen, and to my Ugandan friends, just to let you know that I also had a very good Ugandan lady teacher who taught me English. And I think it is because of her that today I'm a professor of literature. So give and take. And I think the lady contributed more than the gentleman did. So I'm saying I'm not a very good student of history, but the little history that I have done, I seem to have confirmed that every time there is a great social transformation, there is a man or woman who is passionate about that issue and who is committed to it. And let me just give you a few examples. The Christian Reformation needed Martin Luther King. The Civil Rights Movement needed Martin Luther King Jr. The African independence needed people like Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. The women's movement needed someone like Mary Wollstonecraft, Germaine Greer, and others. South Africa needed Nelson Mandela to ensure that the vile racism in South Africa was ended. So it does seem that for every great transformation of society, we do need someone who is passionate about something. And the question I would like to ask ourselves is this opportunity, celebrating 50 years of IUCEA's existence, an opportunity for us to cause that kind of transformation? If that's going to happen, who is going to lead that for us? Where is that person? Where is she or he? And what should be their focus? Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot answer that question today, but I do hope that we will get such kind of people that can help us to transform that. Well, that's one of the reasons why we invited the keynote speaker today. I mentioned that I have known him for quite a bit of time. And the volumes that he was mentioning, we worked together for a very long time with other team of members as well, trying to make sure that we would put this system in place. And I know that Professor Mayunga does not like psychophancy, so I am not going to praise him too much, otherwise I'll be in trouble after this meeting. But I know that he did a great job and he's continued to do the same. And I do believe that in the context of the discussions that we are going to have today, with the permanent secretaries that we have from our partner states, we can put our heads together and we can dream big dreams and ensure that plans for higher education in the East African region are implemented. With these few remarks, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that IUCEA will be at the service of the East African community. May I take this opportunity now, ladies and gentlemen, to ask the chair of the Inter-University Council Executive Committee, I see he's online. I would like to ask him to just say a few words and then invite the minister to come and address this audience. Professor Bey, karibu.
Kind of unmute. Yes.
Thank you very much, the Acting Secretary, Executive Secretary, Professor Mike Kuria. Our chief guest, Minister of East African Affairs from the Republic of Uganda, the permanent secretaries responsible for East African cooperation, permanent secretaries present responsible for higher education, the representative of the East African community and representative of the East African Business Council, the acting executive secretary, Professor Nkunya, our keynote speaker, the invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. The chief guest, let me join hands with the acting executive secretary to formally welcome you to this important event of the 50th anniversary of the Inter-University Council for East Africa. Today, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Inter-University Council for East Africa. And some of us are able to attend physically in Entebbe at the Imperial Golf View Hotel, and others are following or attending virtually. I welcome all of you, those of you who are able to attend physically and those of you who are able to join virtually. I take this opportunity on behalf of the Executive Committee of the Inter-University Council to welcome you and thank you for your attendance. As part of this celebration, we are organizing a conference with the theme of Role of IUCEA in the Development of Higher Education and fostering of East African regional integration, opportunities and challenges. In executing this celebration through the conference that you're going to address soon, we have gathered eminent speakers who have made already their initial presentations, and some will follow after your opening remarks to this gathering. The speakers are eminent people who have vast knowledge in the area of higher education, but also who have worked at some point or connected with higher education in the East African area. We also have invited government officials and development partners. We also have the Vice-Chancellors, people from the industry, but also academicians and the public at large. The idea here is to foster the academic public partnership that is our major spirit in the development and contribution of higher education in our countries. The guest of honor, IUCEA is proud to be one of the oldest East African community institutions. And allow me to thank all those who made this institution to survive over the turbulences that it faced throughout the 50 years of its existence. But I'm sure this would have not happened without the able leadership of different people who manage the institution at different points. So allow me to register my appreciation to all those who were involved in making sure that this institution survived all these years, including the executive secretaries at different points, but also the executive committee at different points that manage the existence of the Inter-University Council. The guest of honor, the core mandate of the Inter-University Council, as it has been pointed out, is to contribute to the strategic development of higher education and research in East Africa by facilitating contacts among universities in the East African area, but also to provide forum for discussion on a wide range of academic and other matters relating to higher education councils and commissions in the partner states and facilitating the attainment of comparable higher education academic standards in East Africa. To achieve this, the Inter-University Council made different strategic plans at different points, and the implementation of these strategic plans have registered different successes. However, in executing our activities, we have also received enormous support from the member states' governments. And allow me, on behalf of the Executive Committee, to thank our governments for the continued support it has provided to the Inter-University Council over all these years. Our existence for these 50 years would have not been possible without that massive support from our governments. But equally important, we have received generous contributions from development partners, particularly the DAD from Germany, and other development partners who made their contribution to different activities in implementing the strategic plans that I've mentioned a few minutes ago. Equally important, the leadership of the Inter-University Council, as I already mentioned, the executive secretaries at different points who were getting through rotational arrangements, but also the executive committees that worked very hard to make our organization success. The chief guest, I believe, and I concur with the acting executive secretary, that transformation of East Africa into a common higher education area, it is our commitment and will continue to be our commitment. And I'm sure if everybody plays his role, we will succeed in this regard. And I again concur that as East Africa, we must dream big, and it is possible if we all work together. And in this respect, the guest of honor, I know it is your day to give a speech, and it's not my day. And for this reason, I now formally welcome you to address our conference. The guest of honor, sir.
Chairperson of the Executive Committee of the Inter-University Council for East Africa, Permanent Principal Secretaries, Ministries of East African Affairs, EAC partner states present physically and virtually, the Secretary General, East Africa Community Secretariat, Acting Executive Secretary, Inter-University Council for East Africa, Vice-Chancellors from the IUCEA, member universities present, invited ladies and gentlemen. Before I make my formal speech, when I was coming, I had announcements which I had observed yesterday on television of the discovery of vaccination against coronavirus. Now, when I was going through the list, I looked for African contribution, East Africa or African contribution. It was non-existent. And all these are innovations done by researchers, and researchers are domiciled in universities. Then I asked myself, if these fellows are developing these vaccines, and the vaccines are seen as known for existence, and we are not making a contribution, and yet we have to exist, how are we going to go about it? We are going to go about it by buying products produced by other intellectual resources other than our own. And it's not because we don't have the scientists with the brains. It's because we fail to come together to put our resources to be able to support our intellectual capacity to compete with the rest of the world in innovation, science and innovation, which is the responsibility of universities. Sometime in the 60s, the late Mwalimu Nyerere was addressing the people of Tanzania, and he alluded to North Korean engineers developing a tractor which could only move in reverse. Now the Tanzanian population, they laugh. Then Nyerere looked at them and said, Mnacheka? Mnacheka? What now Tanzania? Mnacheka? That you are laughing. Where is yours, which does not move at all? At least this one is one which moves in reverse. You don't even have one that moves in reverse. So, looks like we, the African people, have to put up our socks. Because in this instance, we are going to externalize African resources to buy what we could develop ourselves here. We are externalizing African resources at our own expense. We have the brains, we have the capacity, and if African governments pull together their resources, they could build the laboratories that can develop these vaccines. Just because we are a bit diverted. We enjoy our flag independence. We want to be the United Republic of Tanzania, the Honorable Republic of Uganda, Republic of, I don't know, Sudan, Republic of Nigeria, Kingdom of Morocco. Ladies and gentlemen, sovereignty in poverty is poverty of sovereignty. Poor people have no voice. Nobody listens to poor people. Might is right in the contemporary world. And we can only develop our own might to develop these vaccines and the other intellectual innovations when we come together as a people. That should be the job of the Inter-University Council of East Africa, to ensure that we are not operating different universities, each one doing its own endeavors, but that we are doing something in collaboration to be able to serve the interests of the African people. That's what I'm looking at. When I first heard of the Inter-University Council of East Africa, I was at Makerere University in 1972-73. Well, I'm getting to the evening of life. I have to see something big the universities have produced. The secretary said they are now about 130. What does that commonality of your universities have to show? What is there to show as a product of the commonality of these universities, the Inter-University Council? Why do we still think within the box? Why do we operate within the box? Yeah. We are very good Christians, as it was in the beginning. It is now. World without end, amen. Ladies and gentlemen, the rest of the world is not waiting for us. The rest of the world is not waiting for us. And it behoves you, the intellectual class, the middle class, the academicians, to tell us, the African governments, that individually we cannot go very far. We must come together, bring together the countries to think together, to unite our business people, to unite our intellectuals, for us to be able to compete like everybody else in the world. I want to remind you that nobody owes us a living. Nobody owes us a living. And although I'm grateful to our development partners, I must also remind the African people that there is no free lunch. There is no free lunch. Nobody can give you free lunch. Not even your parents. When your parents give you something to eat, send it to school, they also expect something in return from you, some level of service, at least to say thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, I call upon the Inter-University Council of East Africa to bring together our universities for our universities to be able to compete with the rest of the world, and also to awaken the African governments to act in concert to be able to save this economic, intellectual, and labor hemorrhage. I feel very, very, very deeply saddened when I see African peoples drowning in the Mediterranean, running away from resource-rich Africa to resource-exhausted Europe. They drown. They are running away from goods and going to places where they are going to sell their labor very cheaply. I don't know whether history will judge us kindly, those who look at history and look at us, that we existed, that these things were happening, and our people were drowning in the Mediterranean going to Europe. Last time they took us in chains, now we are paying to go and be slaves. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable, and I appeal to you as intellectuals, as people who have had opportunity to exercise freedom of thought, and the liberty to believe into sciences, both social and material, to be able to rein in the African governments for us to actualize our independence. Like I said, sovereignty in poverty is poverty of sovereignty. I thank you. Let me take this opportunity to declare this conference open. I thank you.
Thank you very much, our chief guest. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause for our chief guest. And we just have one more activity, Honorable Minister, which we would like you to participate in. And so we want to cut the cake. So I want the team to see how they can draw this cake closer. We want to celebrate these 50 years, Honorable Minister, by formally cutting this cake. And I'm not so sure how we will send it to those who are joining us online, but I guess everyone here can eat 2 pieces, one for the person online and one for yourself. So as we arrange to bring the cake, I also wanted the Honorable Chief Guest to mention that we will have a photo session immediately after this, which we'll again arrange and the Secretariat will manage. And then we will also quickly then move into our panel discussion. And Honorable Minister, if you're available, it would be we would be honored to have you with us as these eminent persons representing the various countries speak to us in our panel discussion, reflecting on the keynote presentation that was made by our professor here, who also was formerly an executive secretary of the Inter-University Council of East Africa. So we will now prepare for our chief guest, Honorable Minister, and Mama Mwanje, and of course, Professor Mike. You'll make your way to formally cut the cake. And Dr. Kosam will have some people witnessing. Do we have representation? At least a few people witnessing. And as usual, we are following all the Ministry of Health guidelines. We will be socially distanced. We are going to sanitize the people going to touch the knife, so we don't take any chances. And also, if you're watching and joining us via Zoom, or if you're actually watching us via the YouTube page of the Inter-University Council of East Africa, IUCEA page, YouTube page, you will be able to witness this celebration of 50 years of the Inter-University Council of East Africa. All right, so you let me know, team, when you're ready, so that we are able to officially witness this cutting to celebrate 50 years. Okay. Okay. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Very big congratulations to you. And then we have our guests and the Secretary and the PS, the Ministry of Community Affairs, will partake of this cake, and of course we will later again celebrate 50 years. Many more years to come as we celebrate the University Council of East Africa with the as I mentioned, we will have a group photo here. Over here.
Online with photo, and then we do 2 photos live and screenshot. It's a screenshot. Yes.
Thank you very much. And I will request the representatives we have here, at least we should have 1 to 2 representatives. Dr. Sam, please allow us to be with this photo. Yes, the rest of us will stand at the back. Please ensure we are socially distanced. Let's have our masks on. These are very typical signs that we are managing this virus, and so we want to ensure that everyone is here. We also try to ensure that all of our virtual members are on the screen, so we're going to have a screen set up to have as many of them available on the screen. So we are setting that up very shortly. Okay, just very shortly, give us 2 more seconds. We'll have all our virtual members, well, most of them are available on the screen. So our virtual audience and our virtual speakers, please line yourselves up. We want to make sure that you're in the right frame. There you go.
Please turn on your camera. Everybody online, turn on your camera.
Turn on your camera. There you go.
Turn on your camera. Turn on your camera. We are going in the for group photo. It's a group photo, and you are all going to get a copy.
And Mustafa, if you don't have we will inject you to the button and have those.
We're still checking. Turn on your camera, smile.
George Barata. Mustafa is coming online. Mustafa, thank you very much.
Stay online, stay online. Stay online.
We're waiting for you. I think we have another second.
Stay online, we're still taking more pictures.
Stay online, we have one more picture. And for some people, we're still waiting for you. There you go. James, Lloyd, thank you. Okay.
Still take. Stay online. We are still taking the second page.
There you go. The first page. As many people as possible.
We're on the third page. Please turn. Third page, I don't see anybody's camera.
Okay.
Stay online. Thank you for turning up.
Thank you very much. Which you can take a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
One more last, please. Please, one more last. Kindly. I'm on the last page, a minute. As you can see on the screen, I have one more.
All right. One more page, and we should be able to capture everyone in this group picture. Okay.
One more. Yes, one. That's the last one. Thank you. The team online, you can stay online. I'm checking the last one online.
Okay. The minutes will be with us, but we are quickly going to move to our panel. So I want to thank you all, our watching audience. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And we will request both the Executive Secretary and Dr. Kosam to be with the Minister. He's with us, but he's coming back. I want to request our panelists, if you could make your way to the front. I'll request that Mama Mwanje doesn't go very far. So Dr. Kosam, maybe we can have Mama Mwanje come back so we can continue our conversation. And I'll request our panelists. I also want in a very special way to recognize our representatives from Tanzania and Rwanda. The PS Rwanda has been assigned another assignment, has given us another representative, and I will be mentioning both panelists who are joining us. So we will have 2 online panelists, if not 3, and then we'll have Burundi and Uganda represented here on the panel that will be looking at the keynote presentation by Professor Kunya, and also open to the audience that is here in the room to share their comments and questions on the presentation. So we will have Mama Mwanje, who will be joining us at the front, and also we're just setting it up here just to make sure we have everyone. So I want in a very special way to recognize available online, representing the PS of Rwanda, who was with us, Oswald Nyakano was with us, but has now delegated Kamsime Frederick. Kamsime Frederick is a division manager in the Ministry of East African Community Affairs in Rwanda. Also with us is the Deputy PS of Tanzania in the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, Professor James Mudoi. Professor James Mudoi, I saw you online and we will be talking to you. But allow me to invite the PS Burundi, Dr. Frederick Banjirinama, to come to the front. Please feel free to come to the front. I'll give you a microphone for you to be able to share your perspective. And also with us will be the PS Uganda, Minister of East African Community Affairs, Mama Edith Mwanje, and also the PS Kenya, Dr. Desai, who is also with us. So I want our online team to be able to line up our presentations online in that order. So I will probably request that the PS Kenya, Dr. Desai, you stand by to speak to us very shortly. But
I want to request that maybe we start with Burundi, that is here in the room, as we line up Dr. Desai. Dr. Desai will be speaking to us very shortly after Dr. Frederick. So Dr. Frederick, I just need to make sure I will give you my microphone, but I have another microphone here, and then I will come back to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're joining us online, we are quickly moving into the final part of our morning session, this official opening ceremony. And I want us to move into the panel discussion, where we are looking at the keynote presentation by Professor Cunha, and of course, staying with what he discussed with us this morning, that is the role of IUCEA in the development of higher education and fostering the East African integration agenda. So I want to begin with you, Dr. Frederick.
Feel free to begin with your perspective on Professor Cunha's presentation, Dr. Frederick. So please feel free to start. I don't know if you want to set him up first, so that the audience, much audience can hear you. So that the much audience can hear you. And, all right. So do I give you the microphone? You can be basically looking at
Yeah, sorry, we are setting up the first speaker in the room, and I'm trying to find other speakers who've been mentioned. If you've been mentioned, kindly raise up your hand. So I will be ready to activate your microphones. Thank you. I'll be there shortly. The first one is Frederick. He's in and he's right on the screen.
It's okay. Okay. Thank you. I'm Frederick Bangirinama, Permanent Secretary to the Ministry of National Education and Scientific Research, Burundi. Thank you very much, Professor Cunha, the former Executive Secretary of IUCEA, for this rich presentation, which clearly shows as the major project already carried out by Inter-University Council of East Africa. Congratulations, Prof, as we recognize your merit and your great involvement in these different achievements. I would also like to congratulate the Secretariat and the staff of Inter-University Council for East Africa for the effort made to continue supporting higher education institutions in our region, despite the difficult condition related to COVID pandemic. Many projects have been able to continue by using ICT model. Let us start from 3 or 4 major inter-university council projects, naming the common area for higher education, staff and student mobility, quality assurance, and implementation of qualification framework. If these programs are well conducted, the population of our region will gain the well-being to which the East African community aspires. The tools are already in place, and I think it's necessary to put now our priority on the implementation at the national level, as Professor Nkunya said. The involvement of Inter-University Council for East Africa is highly recommended. Harmonization of our practices must be the pillar of all our initiatives for effective regional integration. Burundi will continue to actively participate in all Inter-University Council East Africa efforts to promote higher education in our region. We reaffirm our commitment to regional integration, to collaboration, partnership, and elaboration of projects in our region. But I would like to ask one question to Professor Nkunya. Since we begin looking for the common area for higher education in our region, are we happy at the stage we are? And the tools of assurance quality put on place, are they working in our partner states? That's some questions which must be responded if we want that integration in our region be a reality. Let me congratulate again the Inter-University Council for East Africa and say that it is a pleasure for me to participate at this event, and Burundi is happy to be member, a partner state of this Inter-University Council for East Africa, and our commitment is there, and they will continue to participate actively. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. And I'll come back to you, Doctor. That will be a little later. We are now going to invite the PS Kenya, Dr. Desai. PS, I see you. We have unmuted on our end, and we're hoping you can be able to speak to us. So, Dr. Desai, your quick perspective on the presentation by Professor Nkunya. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Honourable ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, I'm very pleased to be here with you celebrating your Jubilee anniversary and the profound developments as outlined by the keynote speakers that have been achieved to date with respect to your aspirations for promoting greater integration, the structures that you put in place to ensure that we have harmonized quality assurance capacity, and the efforts that you put and volumized with respect to assessment and further integration of the national qualifications framework and assessments, and also your onward aspirations to promote greater governance, promote research, and build further capacity with respect to learning outcomes within East Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, at 50 years old and all this effort that has been put in place and such great achievements by our scholars, our academia, our private sector, our government, indeed, it is a time to reflect on some of the greater challenges we have, the turbulent times we live in just now, the social disparities, the many global development targets that remain unfulfilled, the challenges we have with respect to implementing SDG goals, including the promotion of women to education, as well as finding ways in which we promote relevance and skills and within our countries. The recognition of the importance of technical vocational training and its role in being a pillar and foundation to education. And the quest that we have with respect to ensuring greater competitiveness and knowledge-based economies, as well as promoting greater skills and organizational learning, finding ways in which we're able to address new challenges in development, and the approach that we need in order to promote partnerships between other stakeholders like the private sector and the public sector. The quest, for example, to shift from input competencies to learning outcomes as a goal. This indeed is a time for reflection. It is a time maybe to consider a different approach, consider the possibility that we need to be more of a value proposition for development affairs as academics. And indeed, we need to find ways in which we address, through this value proposition, a sustainable way in which we can fund this common education approach. We need to find ways in which we address issues with respect to access, broadening the capacities of education to the remotest parts and hinterlands and our youth. The combination between a link between technical vocational training and universities. After all, TVET's focus on skills, universities on skills, education and research, and ensuring that that fabric is accessible to the remotest child in the remotest village, for the benefit that indeed what lies within our natural resources, fundamental traits, of curiosity and creativity and resourcefulness in every single child within the EAC. And therefore, that lost opportunity, that lost link and alignment to development opportunity, livelihoods, is something that we need to put at the apex of a new design. The issues with respect to equity, the promotion of scale and speed and capacity to address those who are less endowed, whether it's through scholarship programs, but more importantly, inclusion of women in education. The issues with respect to our standards and not only the harmonization of our quality assurance systems, but most importantly, to profoundly promote access by having policies of recognition of prior learning to those that would like to have additional pathways into an educational system and be not hindered in the process of doing so. And that ability for a system to actually be reflective and accommodative to what exists in reality in order to transform that reality. The long-standing issue with respect to relevance and how education promotes a link not only to economic development, but also social and environment. Within Kenya's context, we hold a yearly event called the Young Scientist Kenya Initiative, which creates a link to those traits that I talked about: curiosity, creativity, and resourcefulness. And it's just profound and exhilarating to see in the remotest part of this country that we have young people with so much talent. It's up to us to create those systems and structures that nurture those traits. And in time to come, that powerful investment back into our social economic development. Yesterday at a youth EAC event, which took place in Nairobi, there's a huge cry from the youth with respect to their involvement within development affairs, within the promotion of EAC, within the security of their livelihoods and their prosperity into the future. And it's that energy, that vigor that needs to be connected to through frameworks and structures, as discussed by previous speakers. Very important too is our efforts collectively towards addressing transboundary issues on the ecology, fauna, flora. These are all value propositions for academia who have very unique capacities in terms of organized research and skills development and education to find a sustainable way for their transformation by providing solutions to respective countries with respect to sustainability and inclusiveness to natural resources, whether they be fauna, flora, the ecology, and so on, and to create that link between communities and conservation. On the economic sector, we're yet to find solutions to promote interdependence of value chains, processes and produce grown in one country being value added and manufactured in other countries, and promoting science and technology and innovation for the greater value generation of that produce. This is yet, once again, an applicable area for university education systems to play a role, and the entire IUCEA to coordinate. It has done well in creating the various centers of excellence, the Kidney Institute in Kenya, the Heart Institute in Tanzania, the Regional Cancer Institute in the Republic of Uganda, the Nutritional Science Institute in the Republic of Burundi, and the Center of Excellence in Biomedical Engineering and eHealth in Rwanda. These are the sort of programs, together with scholarships, which promote that integration, which are of great value in this new phase of development. We're also looking at the keen focus on promoting inclusivity, especially within cross-border opportunities, the promotion of trade hubs, the ability for farmers who live in the hinterland to access new value markets through access to trade hubs and trade markets within our region, and the promotion of a high-class, high-end transport system to promote that trade link, but most importantly, help communities benefit in the process. There's the aspect of social development too. How do we find a way in which, while we've done so well as IUCEA, to ensure that doctors, scientists, physicists are able to travel and wander in each other's countries to practice their skills and competencies? How do we promote the possibility that artisans, craftsmen, master craftsmen, technicians, and technologists also have a chance to be recognized for their occupational standards, their skills and competencies, in order to turn up to any opportunity of work, whether a Kenyan turns up to Tanzania and is judged by his ability for his welding skills, his underwater welding skills, and therefore has the ability to work at an international level and weld a ship underwater in Tanzania. And so that harmonization and that role of IUCEA in ensuring that we coordinate the development of standards, whether it's in hospitality, in manufacturing, in welding, and all other artisanal courses, then promotes a greater funnel for people to be involved in the mainstream of education, skills, and research. And finally, the ability to promote and recognize prior learning within our EAC countries, and to ensure that the IUCEA sets standards too, therein too, so that we're able to be as inclusive as possible to those that want to consistently transform. I think that indeed these are some of the challenges that we face as policymakers as we try to find ways in which we leverage from the power of an economic bloc, the power of a social bloc, the power of an environmental block to really provide those necessary solutions and a value proposition for investment. And I do think that indeed this is the best possible time for the academia to take one more step forward beyond what it's done since 1963, and to see to that in this new framework of thinking that indeed it's interconnected and collective in action by all stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Historical aspects of why muted. You ran us through what's going on. That's okay. Okay, you ran us through the history of the Inter-University Council, starting from the association of the 3 universities and also the Inter-University Committee and where we are right now, the Inter-University Council of East Africa. And I want to thank you very much for that. I think we would not have had a better person to present that than you, because you lived it. Now, quickly, in the interest of time, I would like to make some comments on the presentation, just discuss some of the issues. One of the things that I would like to talk about is to what extent are the communities of East Africa aware of the existence and the role of the Inter-University Council in fostering the East African integration. I think that's one of the things that we should really look at very critically. To what extent are our communities within the region aware of this institution and the work that they are doing to promote the East African integration? I think that's a very important issue, which I have realized that there is a closedness of this institution and the universities. And therefore, the people may not know how they can work with this institution or how they can benefit from this institution. There is a need for, I think, communication, a very well-designed communication strategy to inform the people of East Africa and the communities about the role of this institution and how we can actually work together. For example, I want to ask a question. Do the private sector, the industries, know about the existence of this institution and the arrangements for the universities. When I once worked in the Uganda Manufacturers Association, at that time, Chambogo, the university was a polytechnic. And they did come to women, they said that they want to work with women, to work with the private sector, to work with the manufacturers, to understand what are their needs in terms of manpower, so that when they go to design their curriculum, they can address the needs of the people who are supposed to provide the jobs to the people who are living in the universities. That is one of the examples of how you can work with the private sector, work with the manufacturers, work with the people, the employers out there to understand exactly what their needs are in terms of the product, kind of university students you are producing out, and what is the training that they undertake vis-a-vis, this is the training that actually people out there need. So at that time, then we made an arrangement whereby the manufacturers agreed that they would be taking on a certain number of students for their training. This, what do we call it? That training where you place them and they train before they finish, complete their university education. So I thought that we could look on that aspect to see exactly how does now the University Council come in and help to play that role of ensuring the academic private-public partnerships works out. Number two, I've realized that at the different institutions of the ESC, there's a lot of research that goes on and studies, but I don't see the university lecturers and students taking part into these studies. In other words, can we have a think tank? Can we create a think tank out of these universities who are working under the inter-university, who are organized under the Inter-University Council? Can we have them doing some research, relevant research, which actually can help the community, the East African community, to understand, can bring out, because you know the minister talked about the issue that you should come out and tell the countries that without integrating, what is it that they miss? And by integrating, what is it that they gain? If that research comes out of universities, if that voice comes out of universities, we are likely to take it on board, because we know that normally you are very professional and you are not shared towards a particular country. So we'd like to say, how do we make sure that we can harness the existing resource that universities have, and how does the Inter-University Council come in to make sure that we harness those resources? The minister talked about the research and the innovation. I don't want to repeat that. In some of these challenging areas, how do the universities come in through research and do innovation and make proposals to the countries? Because I understand that in Makerere, they have come out with the event, what? The one for breathing in. Ventilators, yeah, that they come out with ventilators. This information, of course, needs to be out there for all of us to appreciate and actually take advantage of it. The other issue that I was thinking about is actually funding. The professor talked about the funding, the aspect of funding as a challenge to both the universities and also the Inter-University Council. And as we see, if you look at the funding, go into detail and look at who funds the Inter-University Council. If you look at the percentages, you realize that the Inter-University Council of East Africa is being funded mainly externally. And of course, we have been told that there is no free meal. And if they are funding us externally, to what extent are they sharing our agenda? How are they influencing our agenda towards their own interests. Now, this matter actually does not only concern the Inter-University Council of East Africa, but it's a problem also for all the institutions and the organisms of the East African community, in that we have a problem of funding, and mostly the donors come in and do fund, and actually that should not be good. You look at the past, I think like 60% of the funding of the community comes from outside the partner states. Right now, of course, there is a move towards identifying an alternative funding mechanism whereby countries are going to contribute from their customs revenue, a percentage. This has been done in under African Union, and I do believe that actually in East African community, partner states need to think about this seriously, because charity begins at home, and therefore instead of funding AU under that arrangement, we should make sure that even in the community, countries do make contributions, the percentage of what customs revenue they are getting in their countries. Now, I must say that a lot has happened. If you look at the history, a lot has happened. If you look at where we started in 1970 and where we are now, a lot has happened. The institution has worked very well, and it has achieved great success. But I think right now, we need to move a little bit deliberately, in that now we should say, we are an institution of the ESC. We have to make a contribution. Our sector is the education sector, higher education. How can we make a deliberate contribution towards the integration of East Africa deliberately? So that all the strategic plans that we are going to make should reflect the focus of the Inter-University Council towards making a contribution to ensure that East African agenda is achieved. I think that is now going to be very, very critical, that we sit and say, this is the direction that we are going to go. And since we now have already a development plan for the ESC, we look at it and cut out one niche and pursue that one. For the time being, I want to stop there, but I want to thank the Inter-University Council. We are trying to do everything possible to make sure that we pay all our arrears. Professor, arrears now is not a big discussion, because actually we've been paying, country like I think the Republic of Kenya has paid almost all its arrears. Uganda we are finishing our arrears this financial year. So we have done a lot, and I do believe that the Inter-University Council is more funded now than it used to be. And that's what we think that's the direction to go. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mama Mwende.
And I think it was always predictable what would be on the agenda. At least one item on the agenda was very predictable. So Mama, thank you for the commitment of the member countries in actually clearing the arrears, which go a long way in helping the Inter-University Council do its job. I see that all the panelists are speaking to the keynote presentation and literally agree with the professor on his findings and what he shared with us earlier. And if you're just joining us, you could track the conversation on the Inter-University Council of East Africa YouTube page, and you should be able to find it. If you put IUCEA, you will be able to see it. Please subscribe and follow the conversation there. You could also watch the presentation, the keynote presentation by Professor Kunya. Allow me now invite the division manager representing the PS Rwanda, Mr. Frederick Kamasime, is the division manager in the Ministry of East Africa Community Affairs, and he's joining us virtually via the Zoom platform. So over to you, Mr. Frederick.
Yeah, thank you so much, Moderate, and good morning to permanent secretaries, our guests, and the professors. It's a pleasure to speak to you this morning on behalf of my permanent secretary, Clementine Mucheka, who couldn't be here because of another commitment. I have a message from her side, just to from the onset, to say that this year we are not only celebrating 50 years anniversary for the Inter-University Council, but we are thanking the Council, the University, for taking the lead in the integration of the East African community. And since they've been at the forefront for 50 years, we have trust, and we believe that the Inter-University Council is a better place to lead the East African community from the education perspective, making sure that people are integrated from a perspective of well-informed, from a perspective of a knowledge, the right mindset to facilitate the integration of the East African community. On the other side, that the government of Rwanda would want to commend the Inter-University Council for the efforts and the key achievements that we have received in the recent years. In particular, something to do with the regional qualifications framework, the establishment of the centers of excellence. The permanent secretary for Kenya has listed them, so I want to go back into that. And the development of the regional fee structure model and the implementation of the scholarship program and the regional benchmarks. Well, those are just key highlights on what the council, or the University Council, has tried to achieve at a regional level, at which from the side of Rwanda, we really appreciate and commend the efforts of the council and the efforts of the partner states as well, to continue funding and supporting the council. Yeah, from our side, we really understand that this really, the work of the Inter-University Council falls at this, and we can't advance without the efforts and the contribution of the Inter-University Council. So from the side of Rwanda, we are committed to the implementation of the Customs Union Protocol, the Common Market Protocol perspective. And from that, would be really, if any assistance, any support is needed from the government of Rwanda, then the ministry and the lead line Ministry of Education in Rwanda, the Education High Council, will be at the center and will be ready to support the implementation of the regional initiatives. Whereas we really appreciate that the efforts that we have at the moment are delivering results, there are some areas that obviously need also a quick look into. We've been talking about education from the perspective of students and learners. We also need to think about teachers' welfare as well, and making sure that the teachers, the cross movement of teachers from one country to another, and the welfare of those teachers is also in line and is also supportive to the maximum that is needed. I think also the permanent secretary already mentioned something to do with quality. So, to expand on that and say that we need to have equitable education as well, making sure that integration is not leaving anyone behind, but also making sure that all the citizens of the East African community have access to same and equal opportunities in terms of education. So that's probably another area that we would want to touch on. From the government of Rwanda, we understand that whatever we're saying and what we're doing requires money, and the East African, the Inter-University Council, same as all the other organs and institutions of the community, depend on partner states' contribution. So it's following up from the recent meeting of the Council of Ministers, Rwanda has started clearing all its areas, which was around $2 million US, So we have already cleared the first installment, and the second installment will be coming shortly. We have already worked out a 2 years remittance plan and annual payment plan. So we are already in line with the council decision to make sure that we make sure that the ESC organs and institutions are properly funded to discharge their functions and duties. So probably that responds to what Mama Mwangi said, that you know, we have to think about the funding as well. It's not something to only talk about the good sides without talking about where the money is coming from. So from the side of Rwanda, we're already working on the settlement of all alias and making sure that we do it in line with the council decision. And within 2 years, we should be able to finish off all the debts, and also working on making sure that the 2020-2021 financial budget, once it's approved, then we can start the meeting our own contribution. Without you know, going into the details, I think the last message that I got from my permanent secretary is that education now at the moment, we're looking at a disruptive. It should be disruptive. It should be responsive to the future and to the current needs that the region and the world is looking for. So anything to do with talent development, you know, education that responds to also the social issues, climate change, you know, mass migration, transboundary issues. That's something that obviously I believe the Inter-University Council is working on, but those are areas that really need critical revision and critical, if I might say, fit for purpose academic curriculums. So without going into the details and taking too much time, I would want to say thank you so much to the Inter-University Council, and thank you so much to the permanent secretaries. And I'll be here if there's any follow-up question, I'll be happy to respond. Thank you so much.
Okay, Professor Mdoi, your mic is unmuted on our end. So now we want to invite you. Professor James Mdoi is from Tanzania, in the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, representing the PS. He is the Deputy PS in the Ministry of Education and Science and Technology. Over to you, Professor.
Oh, thank you very much, Moderator. Permanent Secretaries, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity, first of all, to congratulate all stakeholders of higher education in the East African community, as well as IUCEA for celebrating 50 years. It has been a long way, but I think you are moving forward step by step. As a country, of course, we have come a long way in the higher education subsector, starting from a single university. Now we are talking of about more than 40 universities. Of course, the history has been put forward very excellently by our colleague from Kenya. But what I want to put forward that we appreciate what IUCEA has been doing for the 50 years. It has done a good job. We have to appreciate that. And as a country, Tanzania, of course, you have benefited a lot. Talking of, for example, the centers of excellence, we have a number of them, and they have contributed a lot in, capacity building for our people in Tanzania. Talking of scholarships, talking of staff mobility, you name them. Of course, this has been listed and been explained very well. What we are saying is we appreciate the good work that IUCEA has done so far. However, Of course, my colleagues have touched a number of issues, which I'm not going to repeat. But I'll talk mainly of two issues. One is that this aspect of research and development. Our partner states in the East African community, of course, have a number of challenges. We have issues like diseases, poverty, youth unemployment, famine, drought, and challenges like that. But then when it comes to research, are we doing enough to solve real problems of the people? Are we doing research so as to solve what is affecting our communities? I think this is the area that we need to look into very closely, because of course something has been done already, we know, and some universities do honorable research, I would say so, but sometimes the research is not such relevant. It's not solving real community problems. I don't have data with me right now, but for example, right now we have this COVID pandemic that is affecting us seriously. But then what do our experts do as far as research is concerned in solving this particular problem using our natural resources that we have? Of course, we are waiting for vaccines, but I haven't heard waiting for vaccines that is coming from our labs in the East African community partner states. So generally what I want to put forward is that we need to do something as far as research and development is concerned. We need to solve our own problems of poverty. What should we do so that we remove poverty? Come up with real solutions, given the circumstances and our environments. We need to do research to know, can we develop medications from our natural resources that are abundant, actually, to be honest, to solve disease problems in our societies. Kind of research that can increase productivity in farming, for example, remove drought and all this. So this is one area that maybe we need to look into seriously. Another area that, of course, you have done something, but we need to put more effort into is collaboration, inter-university collaborations. We do collaborate, but I can tell you, if you ask one professor, I can tell you much of what is happening in Harvard more than what is happening next door. So I don't know, maybe it is to do with lack of funds that you seek for collaborations somewhere where, of course, the collaboration comes with a funding package. But we need to go beyond that to collaborate with each other within our partner states and among our partners and between our partner states as well. We need, for example, if you are in one university, you need to know what is going on in your area, in the next university that is close to you, so that you can, synergize and put efforts together and sometimes pool resources that we have so as to come up with products cheaply and using less effort than when we do this individually. So these are the areas that I think maybe we need to think about again. How should we, push them forward so that at least we come up with better ways of doing that. But again, as my colleagues have said, all these need money. Funding is a problem. So as a country, of course, we are paying our dues. We have already, we're almost, finished now paying our arrears. I think we are left with about 11,000 USD. And of course, the contribution for this particular financial year, which we are committed to do in the shortest time possible, so that at least we don't, impede the activities that are going on at IUCEA. Otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you very much, moderator.
Of the PSs from our member states, and wanted before I ask Professor Cunha to speak to some of the areas of interest and probably pick one or two comments from the chat room. I will, if time allows, I will now like to, in a very, very, very special way, invite our former Executive Secretary, Alexandra Liamba-Baget, to speak to us. So I want to make sure that we have him online and his audio is perfect. So Alexandra, if you are ready, you can speak to us. Over to you, Alexandra.
Thank you, Master of Ceremony. I will not be long. I just want to send my greetings to all participants, all protocols observed. And I would like to take this opportunity because since I left Kampala, it is the first time I can interact with all colleagues, vice-chancellors, permanent secretaries. So it is an opportunity for me to express my sincere thanks to permanent secretaries, principal secretaries, and top leaders of our respective governments for the support extended to Inter-University Council for East Africa for the last 50 years. I would like also to add my voice to what has been said and advocate for strong linkages between Inter-University Council for East Africa, government or partner states, private sector, and our partners from outside the region, in Africa, in Asia, and in Europe and America. I think IUCEA is now in a good position to really play an important role to inform integration in East African community. We have capacities, we have skills and competencies in our universities. As Madame Edith Mwanje said, if governments wish so, Inter-University Council for East Africa is in good position to inform the integration agenda of East African community. I hope that Professor Mike, I'd like to thank him for inviting me for this event, and the team at IUCEA Secretariat will reach out to permanent secretaries, ministries responsible for East African community affairs to see how the mobility of skills, mobility of professionals, and mobility of goods could be facilitated so that we become really one and only one economic region. We have been talking about COVID-19, which demonstrated how fragile our tissue, our system is when it comes to free movement of goods and free movement of people. I hope that the next executive secretary, who is coming on board very soon, will look at how best ideas that have been shared here can be translated into action and policies and studies, well-informed studies, could help our partner states move to the next step of regional integration. I don't have doubt that all of us and our top leaders at country levels are looking for that. But as it happened to Jesus, sometimes it is very difficult to be listened to at home. This is the time we can start trusting our scientists, start trusting our universities, trust our institutions. It doesn't limit from partnering with people from other regions. But I believe that if you do so, if our government entrusts IUCEA and universities with that responsibility to inform the integration agenda, we will move faster and easier. I would like to stop here and once again thank member universities, thank government, thank all development partners for the support extended to IUCEA while I was executive secretary until end of August this year. And thank the government of Uganda for hosting me for the last 5 years. Now I am back home in Kigali, and I'll be more than happy to continue interacting and working with you. Chairperson, Professor B, I'm happy to talk to you once again, and I would like to thank you very much for the leadership provided to the institution all the time I've been working together. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Alexandre. As you can hear and see, for some of our panelists who are here, it's a round of applause for you and your contribution to the council. And I wanted to run through just a comment here I see on the group chat, but also mention that the presentations will be shared with all of you, and that has already been communicated for some of you on the chat. But maybe Professor Cunha, this is maybe also for the other PSCs to think through. The Rita Makumbi says the presence of the quality assurance arm of IUCEA can be more felt in our universities if there are deliberate concerted efforts to champion the East Africa Quality Assurance Agenda in close collaboration with the National Higher Education Commissions. So Professor Cunha, I want to invite you to speak to some of the issues. You have 5 minutes. I really don't have a lot of time. If you could summarize some of the issues raised by the permanent secretaries and the other representatives from the member states, and then I will come back to see whether we can take 1 or 2 more comments and then close. Over to you, Professor.
I'd like to extend sincere appreciations to the PSCs, first of all, for participation in this meeting, all of them. I did not hear the PS from South Sudan, but I think he or she was also represented by his colleagues. But the voice that I have heard from the permanent secretaries is very encouraging, because they are all speaking the same language. First of all, appreciating what IUCEA has done and it continues to do, but more importantly, their commitment to continue supporting IUCEA in different areas, including financing, which during my era was a serious challenge. They have mentioned another, in my opinion, will guide IUCEA, the Secretariat of IUCEA, as it carries out its activities, particularly ensuring that there is inclusiveness in the activities that they carry out, that will bring in stakeholders and the society in general to understand and to appreciate and to contribute towards the efforts that IUCEA is making to promote regional integration. I was really fascinated by statements from the PS in Kenya and the PS in Tanzania, who are emphasizing on collaboration. And this is an area which is still not very strong, despite this was among the core functions of the Inter-University Committee. But collaboration among universities in the region, I think it needs to be promoted more. But all in all, ladies and gentlemen, I think the governments in the East African community are all in support on what IUCEA is doing, and they are committed to continue supporting IUCEA. It is now the challenge to IUCEA to discharge its functions appropriately as expected by the PSCs and the entire EAC community. I thank you very much.
All right. That said, we will shortly move on. But before we do, just in case there is a comment in the room, I'm happy to come back.
Oh, sorry.
Apologies for that. We are learning this new normal, and we learn every single day on how to operate with these things. But it's amazing. Maybe because we need to first put our hands together for how successful this was. Amidst COVID, we had over 70 participants online, and this would never have happened. So a round of applause that there's 70. There's 70 members and stakeholders and partners. And I thought at some point I would read this. There's someone representing his Vice-Chancellor from Malawi who is online. And we want to thank you so much for joining us. And there is so many other partners on the continent that are here and joining us. It's quite the success. And so when we see us socially distanced and say we are very few in the room, we're actually 100 people in total, online and physically. So that's a great conference and a great assembly here. So Dr. Kosam, we will have some guidance on the final bit of our agenda. But before that, in case there is a question or comment in the room, so you don't feel ignored, that you traveled all the way to Uganda and you had a burning comment to make, and we didn't take you. Please note that I am available to come to you in case you have. Other than that, Doctor, you want to guide? Dr. Kosam is trying to ask me to do certain things, which he can do himself, but I don't know why he's dodging. But I wouldn't live without recognizing the Vice Chair, Professor Joy Kwesiga. A pleasure to have you here with us. She's also known to me, so I had to do that part. But just for the final agenda, if you want to guide. Okay, Dr. Jonathan Bambo, and yes, you want to come and guide us on the final bit of this agenda, or you want a minute? I am happy to give you 1 minute. The adoption of the 50 years anniversary. Let us know as soon as you're ready. But just in case you're joining us, 2 things, and for those of you who are virtually joining us, we apologize. You don't have these beautiful masks that we were given, but I have been assured the masks will be emailed. I don't know how we will email the masks, but these beautiful anniversary masks will find their way into your offices. So we want to believe you will be able to join us. Everyone here is wearing one, and we look very beautiful in this in the color white that the masks are made of. I also want, in a very, very special way, to appreciate our PS Mama Manje for ensuring our minister, the Honorable Minister, was here to officially open this assembly. All right, so as Jonathan prepares, I'll give you one. Are we ready? Okay, so, and Dr. Ben, okay, I'll allow, I don't know, I want to to you, Dr. Desai, and also Frederick, plus Professor Mdoi. So we'll begin here. We'll begin with complete saying that during this conference, need to strengthen joint program for the community. We must also accelerate the program on research, on relevant matters which can solve a real problem in our region. We have also to deal with the employability challenge of graduates by strengthening the partnership between universities, private sector, and the other partners. The process of assurance quality by self-assessment and external assessment must be because it guarantees the quality of our teaching and the learning process. We must also continue to strengthen the staff and the student mobility if you want that the regional integration be a reality in our region, if we want that the common area for higher education be implemented. Collaboration between researchers must be improved, and we propose to put on in our region joint center of researchers coming from each countries in a field, and it can improve joint research which are based on real problem in our region. Finally, we must strengthen that linkage, which has been recommended by many representatives of countries, linkage between universities, private sector, and our partner to let researchers, professors, and students to be to have the opportunity to share the experience and to participate actively in many projects in our region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mama Manje. Yes.
Thank you again. Yes, because yes, and I'm my colleague, the permanent secretary. We need more time in our meetings when we are having prepared for the council. Because I want to tell that maybe we listen to the heads of the institution and give them a date when they present and we listen. By the time we get the bodies, the ministers, the officials, they are giving them something here. They are able to take on board the issues that they nobody will listen to the secretary. So I want to say that the next meeting, funding again, I would like to appeal to the Permanent Secretary the issue of funding that we need to see how we can support the budget, see how we can support again the University Council. Let's see that we are really
Thank you very much, Mama Mwanje. I'll come to you now. Apologies for you who are online virtually because of the sound drop. But now you should be able to hear us clearly. And I want to come to Dr. Desai. You have a minute to wrap this up, and then I'll come to Frederick Kamsime. Over to you, Dr. Desai.
Thank you indeed. Once again, the appreciation of this event, and indeed we're hoping to see a lot of impact from this event, a lot of collaboration now going forward. The realization that our challenges are common, whether it's the locust invasion or our aspirations for our manufacturing sector, or ability to create greater value for farmers, the potential we have with respect to solving our food security issues, malnutrition issues. These are of great concern. Examples of successful collaborations towards solutions would highlight, the value proposition to the East African community, and the vigor for greater support of this extremely important resource we have as academics and the IUCEA. These are times when we need to ensure that we leverage as much as possible, and the value proposition for greater levels of productivity and innovation and efficiency in all aspects of our development are critical. We are not alone. We have lots of development partners. The German government has played in the development of CA and continually plays a significant role in research and research beyond continents. And so I think that there's a lot going for us, and I think that we need to find ways in which we keep on developing this college that we are of EAC champions to fully realize integration prospects. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good day.
Thank you very much, Dr. Desai. I will now invite Frederick Kamsime, the Division Manager, Rwanda. Frederick.
Yeah, thank you so much, moderator. I think mine is a short one, is that we have to build on from these discussions and take them forward. We shouldn't leave. So finding discussions, challenges are common to us, but we also have to have corrective solutions. So coming together, building partnerships, making sure that we get new partners and maintain the traditional partners as well. So from our side, we look forward to further engagement with the inter-university between our universities. It is in other partner states in Kenya and Uganda. So with that, I would like to say thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Frederick. And finally, Professor James Mdoi.
Oh, thank you very much, moderator. Mine is very brief. Mine is just to encourage researchers to have confidence. We need to have confidence in ourselves. Also, we need to have solutions for our own problems. Of course, this can be done through collaborations. We need to collaborate amongst ourselves. Of course, due to lack of technology and all that, of course, we need the collaboration, well, South-North collaboration as well. But the only problem that we have is that we are not confident enough, and sometimes we have a kind of should I say, maybe, well, simply no confidence. So if we collaborate, we build the confidence, we change our mentality, I hope we can move forward as far as solving our own problems concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor James. And I want to thank all the PSCs and the representatives for your contribution to this discussion. So I want to now invite Dr. Ben to come and run us through the resolutions. Dr. Ben, do you want to bring the microphone there? I'm happy to. Do you want him to do it from there? Okay, Dr. Ben, please come. You may have to use this one here, I think, or they're going to set you up. Just give us 1 minute as we set him up. We should be able to be with you very shortly.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. I'm going to make not final resolutions, but rather summary of the two major presentations which you received. Number one is the key, the summary of the 3 webinars which took place in the course of celebration of the 5th anniversary of the presentation which was made by Dr. Mbwambo. And then another part is the summary of the presentation from the keynote presenter, Professor Nkunya, and some discussions. I would wish to confess that because of some challenges here and there, I might have not captured some of the things because of the equipment and so on. But this discussion is recorded, more comprehensive and detailed and a clear report will come out of the proceedings report of this. So you will bear with me should I miss some of the items. With regard to the webinar series, it was resolved that through IUCEA actions to institute functions including capacity building to continuously improve administrative, governance, planning, and the stewardship system to enable universities to offer high quality training and research in the East African community. Number 2 is to institute and facilitate development of policy instruments, strategies, projects, and programs for establishment and the management of higher education centers of excellence for specialized training and research in selected priority areas in humanities, science, and technology. Another item, another resolution is to institute systems that is political and operational and facilitate development of projects and the programs for effective community engagement for universities in the region. So we have picked about 1 item for each of the 3 webinars which took place in the course of celebration of this 50th anniversary. Next slide. Now here I present the draft summary and the resolutions from the keynote presentation. The keynote presenter, Professor Mayunga Nkunya, made a keynote presentation, taking the meeting to the genesis of IUCEA as a common higher education area by making reference to the historic EAC socio-economic development cooperation in colonial area at the 60s when the University of East Africa was established in 1963. He presented on the IU's Inter-University Committee in 1970 after colleges of the University of East Africa became autonomous. He informed the conference that IUC continued to function even after breakage of the former EAC in 1977, whereby key functions had been exchange of students and the staff. The presenter explained about developments that led to IUCEA in 1980, thus IUCEA being one of the surviving institutions of the East African community. He elaborated that IUCEA mainly functioned as an association of universities supported financially by partner states. The presenter also made reference to James' study. This is Commonwealth Higher Education Management Study, and the report that led to the revitalization of IUCEA in 2002.
He elaborated about some of the limitations of the IUCEA that function mainly as an association of universities with the governance arm managed by the AGM, which is now referred to in the annual meeting. With IUCEA alignment with the EAC, he presented about frameworks for harmonization of higher education that commenced by harmonization of quality assurance system for higher education. He reported about IUCEA having developed a quality assurance handbook, a roadmap to quality in higher education, which was published in 4 volumes, and that now there are 4 volumes, whereas 2 of the volumes have been made into a compendium, while the 3 volumes are separate. The presenter elaborated about the cascading approach in adapting compliance with the harmonized quality assurance system in the EAC partner states by presenting about other actions on instituting quality assurance system in the region. That includes that IUCEA has reviewed the quality assurance in those documents, the 5 volumes, 2 of them in one and the 3 separate, as I earlier stated. Next, he reported that IUCEA later could develop the quality assurance principles, followed by development of a policy framework at a later stage. He elaborated that the policy framework was made later instead of earlier stages because of the novelty and thus lack of reference experience among key stakeholders to the participatory process to effectively develop the referred policy framework wouldn't have been tenable. That's why the sequence was like that. He reported about additional instruments that include the quality assurance and qualification framework, which is meant to guide the comparability of training systems and attain the qualifications within the EAC region and beyond. He reported about the quality assurance and qualification framework, that tool would enable EAC to realize the declared aspiration of the region of the East African community being a common higher education area. The presenter elaborated that the quality assurance system and subsequent instruments led to continuous capacity development programs among higher education, among higher education across the stakeholders. He reported about the implications of East African Common Higher Education Area, explaining the implications of it that will constitute strategies for operationalization of East African Qualification Framework for Higher Education, administration of coordination, monitoring and evaluation. Universities being required to align to the QA system that will enable compliance with the qualification framework, partner states to align to the EAC systems. In conclusion, the speaker made the following remarks: that common higher education areas is a continuous process which started 2017, and it should be always recalled that it is a commitment of the EAC partner states, and that the stakeholders' commitment was paramount for it to be to bear the fruits which aspired. Now, in regard to panel discussion, we had the Permanent Secretary from Burundi. He congratulated the presenter. He expressed trust that effective implementation of common education area would go far in transforming social economy, expressing Burundi's commitment on regional integration and related derivatives. He inquired about East African Common Higher Education Area in terms of whether the results or outcomes are being attained. He expressed commitment to active participation of Burundi on the common higher education area. Dr. Desai, from Minister of Education, he talked about need to address challenges and promotion of women in education. He explained that this was a time of reflection for academics on how to fund various approaches for effective common higher education area. He mentioned issues of technical skills, creativity, effective opening of boundaries between countries. He talked about science, technology, and innovation promotion among countries, and that IUCEA was called upon to coordinate. He mentioned a number of regional programs hosted in each of EAC partner states for regional benefits, and how to guide on considering other abilities, skills. I wish to confess that in this part, there are areas which I had a problem of communication. but they will be reflected in a more detailed document subsequently. Next. This is the Permanent Secretary of Uganda. I'm sorry I didn't put, she thanked IUCEA, inquired about IUCEA awareness in the region as it works to the integration, how far the region knew about IUCEA, and that IUCEA, how close it was with the universities, and while the community may not know how to engage with the products of their work. And she emphasized that there was need to have a communication strategy for the target group, which are the people in the East African community, to benefit from the interaction between IUCEA and the universities. Next. Then she talked about how the private sector was aware about IUCEA and the university interaction. She mentioned about the potential for IUCEA role in the university's industry link. She recommended a think tank on research and innovation to benefit the target group in community. She made reference to funding challenges, inquiring about the funding proportion between development partners and the regional-led funding in regards to observation of the regional agenda. Appreciating the great work done by IUCEA in the past 50 years, she advised IUCEA to make deliberate moves focused at the regional integration. She thanked IUCEA for the efforts and elaborated that the partner states, including Uganda, were effectively handling their areas matters effectively, and that by large extent, these have been clear, except for very few cases. The Permanent Secretary of Rwanda expressed appreciation for the key role IUCEA plays and can play for the regional integration. He made reference to the quality assurance scholarships and the Center of Excellence, among others. He expressed the commitment by the Rwandan government in supporting IUCEA efforts. He made reference to efforts to ensure integration is not left behind. He expressed commitment to the Rwandan government in complying on directives for compliance with funding obligations, including areas, and that education should be responsive to socio-economic issues. Then we received a presentation from Professor Mdoe, representing the Permanent Secretary of Education Tanzania. He congratulated IUCEA for the 50 years, appreciated IUCEA work for the 50 years, centers of excellence, capacity building in terms of scholarship and staff mobilities. And he expressed concern about issues, research and development. The region has a wide range of challenges: disease, drought, poverty, business, and that many of these would get answers at the appropriate research and the intervention programs, because many of them, I think, are within the reach and the capacities of the countries in the region. And he wondered how were we orienting our research agenda and the plans, whether it was in one way geared into that direction or not. Continuing, he gave an example of COVID-19, which we are now waiting for scholars, and we are waiting for vaccines from teams of scholars, but maybe mostly from the north. And he talked about a level of collaboration ties within partner states and between partner states. He concluded by indicating that the regional efforts to address these matters was paramount. Next. We got also opportunity to get a statement from the Professor Mbabaji, the former immediate former executive secretary of IUCEA. He greeted the conference participants, expressing appreciation to the government of the partner states. He emphasized on linkages between IUCEA, governments, and government development partners. He reiterated on effective environment to allow for effective mobility of people, skills, and the facilities across the region as enshrined in the Common Market Protocol. These are the discussion which took place, but for the second part, I would wish to beg your indulgence that we will condense the resolutions at a later stage, because time was not with us, but at least they will originate from here and we have more detailed information. So in the subsequent documents, we'll have all these well listed and shared. I wish to submit here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ben. And we want to thank you and the team for comprehensively putting together the discussion onto paper. And we will be looking forward to sharing that with the different stakeholders, including those that have joined us for this General Assembly. There was also a request we saw on the chat room for the links to the YouTube and other platforms where the conversation has been going. We will share that, including the presentations, which will be also shared by email to all you participants. In fact, on the chat room, there is a link for you to share the details, your details as a participant of today's General Assembly. So please do honor us and fill in that document. So I want to thank all of you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. And before we conclude this, I want to invite our Vice Chairperson, Professor Joy Kwesiga, to come and close this assembly. It's only right that you close because you are hosting us also. And I also wanted to mention that lunch will be served immediately we close our assembly, and I will be giving guidance on where lunch will be served. You're most welcome, Professor.
Thank you very much, moderator. I'd like to start by apologizing for coming late. I'd informed the executive secretary that I would be late, but I took longer than I had hoped. I'm sorry about that. But I was able to follow a lot of the proceedings on and off because I was moving, and I'd like to thank everybody. First of all, I'd like to join everybody in congratulating the whole community of the Inter-University Council on this 50th anniversary celebrations. This is a great day for us, those in this community. I want to congratulate the Secretariat on this organization of this very well organized celebrations and this event. I like to recognize the contributions of representatives of our member states, the permanent secretaries and other government representatives. I like to recognize my colleagues, members of universities who are members of the IUCEA. And I'd like to recognize the facilitators, keynote speaker, and all those who have contributed to make this occasion very, very, very successful. So, as someone who has gone through this IUCEA, I've had the opportunity to see IUCEA from, I should say, from inception, because when it was started in Kampala, I was around because of my position in Makerere University in the administration. I've seen the days when the late Professor Chigozo was struggling to make this institution survive. So in that light, I'm very happy that the East African community has been able to resuscitate this organization. And though I will not be present, I still look forward to centenary celebrations. At least some of you will be present. I don't say I plan to be there, I would wish, but it is unlikely. So I think the indication is that really this is a great institution. It has survived and it's now performing at a high level. So we are very proud of the situation of the current organization as it is. And I congratulate everybody who has made it a success once again. I would like to emphasize an issue of continuity in this particular area. And this is evidenced by the fact that Professor Mkunya, for example, is always invited whenever there are these functions. I'd like to thank you, Professor Mkunya, for really continuing this thread of your work, and you continue to be part of it. And I can see Alexander is following up in the relay. I hope this will continue, because this is how we shall build on the organization, rather than saying so and so has gone, you want to be part of this. This is a commendable action and a commendable practice that we are able to continue with our predecessors rather than putting them down. So I hope to see Professor Kuya and others continuing in this manner. And I think this is something to celebrate. I'd like to thank members of universities who selected us to run the executive committee of this organization for the past 3 years or so. I'd like to particularly thank them for putting confidence in me to be vice chairperson. I thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the chairperson for the support and collaboration we have had. So with those few words, I would like to thank you once again for this very great celebration, which is really worth celebrating, and it's something that we must work together to continue. I like to say that we all want to see East Africa as a common higher education area, and we should work towards making it a reality. Thank you once again. Thank you very much. And I have this opportunity to close this event, the celebrations, with great pride. Thank you very much.
Very much, Professor, and thank you for wrapping this conversation. So the very, very most important announcement I'm sure all of you wanted to hear is that lunch is in Crown Restaurant. That is now sorted, so you don't have to worry about lunch. So you will know where Crown Restaurant is. As you walk out, we will have someone to guide you, and we will be receiving a lunch coupon on our way out. So we want to thank all of you who have been with us online, and everyone here in this room for being part of this great celebration of 50 years, a great conversation that was begun by Professor Kunya and has been concluded with Professor Kwesiga. I have never felt as intelligent as I am today, with a number of professors, and doctors online and here in this room. And I think I understand why I was invited, because you wanted me to appreciate the level of intelligence we have in East Africa. And I honestly, I am excited to have been part of this conversation. I am hearing the same thing, partnerships, collaboration, whether it's across, talking about research or actually in the movement of our teachers and students. I like what I'm hearing, and as a practitioner, a media practitioner, I see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. I like where Professor Kunya went with in terms of monitoring, collaborating, and even trying to be able to drive the conversation of the East African Federation, Regional Federation. You can lead the pace. I want to say that the musicians started this. The music has been crossing borders since I don't know when forefathers were here. And we can do this as academics in leading the regional integration conversation. And so Professor Kunya threw the ball in the court. Everyone who spoke after that spoke to the same issue. I think you should lead this conversation, whether it's through research, whether it's through community engagement that he was speaking to, and whether it's through the think tank that I have had and is being talked about, or whether it's through engagements at your level with the different member states. I really wish you well, and it was an honor and a pleasure to be part of this 50th anniversary celebration of the Inter-University Council of East Africa. Thank you. God bless and good afternoon.
On behalf of the IUCEA at 50 organizing team, the IUCEA staff and the IUCEA management, I wish to extend a heartfelt appreciation to Mr. Maurice Mugisha, who has really done justice to this day. Can you give a big round of applause to Maurice? As Maurice mentioned, lunch is ready. It will be served at Crown Restaurant. Just when you reach the restaurant, take the stairs up, which is up there. You'll find the proper direction to that. But again, I want to take this opportunity to invite you all who are here physically, that we have a social distancing cocktail at 4 o'clock, at least to wind up our conversation.